I'm really high on the Seahawks. I got them at 15. I think while Shane Waldron did a lot of great things, I think this offense there's a different layer that it can tap into with Ryan Grubb. And I really do trust the defense. This is just the one thing I want to mention on them. They ranked 19th in personnel usage in 2023. They didn't use 11 personnel much, which is 3 wide receiver sets. Odd because DK, JSN, and Lockett are the 3 best options at receiver. They were 26 in EPA with 3 wide receiver sets. Second in EP usage in 2023. They didn't use 11 personnel much, which is 3 wide receiver sets. Odd because DK, JSN, and Lockett are the 3 best options at receiver. They were 26 in EPA with 3 wide receiver sets. Second in EPA and 2 wide receiver sets. So this was a team that had elite efficiency when they only had 2 wide receivers out there on the field as opposed to 3. 22% of DK's targets came on 20-plus yards down the field, and 35.5% of JSN targets were at or behind the line of scrimmage. The way that these 2 players were being used, DK, there's an exception, but the way JSN was being used, it's just really not to his strength.
Did you see, this was a minute ago. I think this maybe was during like the draft combine of this past year. JSN was on some sort of interview, and they asked him, because he's like, oh, like, Shane Waldron, he's going on to the Bears. Like, what do you think of him? He's looking around. He's like, is this live? They're like, yeah. He's like, he's a great guy. I was just like, damn. So, but that goes to show, like, he was not used how we were seeing him at Ohio State. He is not used how when he was coming out of that draft class, I know me and Drew at least thought he was the best receiver in this class. Like, he was a guy that was out there with Chris Olave and Garrett, and he was producing at the highest level. It's difficult as a rookie when you got DK and Lockett, who are established, they're vets, they've done what they've done in their career and just break out. But that doesn't mean you're supposed to get used in like a gimmicky type way.
Yeah. It sucks that he's on an offense that's so awesome in terms of DK Metcalf, and of course,
they
just re-signed Lockett too.
Re-signing Lockett was. Listen, I've always been vocal about it. I really like JSN. He was my number 1 wide receiver. And when I was watching him next to Garrett and Olave, he stood out to me more than Garrett and Olave did. It was just constantly CJ Stroud peppering him with targets because he was getting open. I look at it in a sense where you listed the numbers where they are better in 2 wide receiver sets, but again, he's unfortunately in a position where Lockett has been one of the more consistent, outside of maybe last season, one of the more consistent number 2s. DK Metcalf got back to being that dominant force type wide receiver, but again, that offensive front to me is still a concern. I look at Geno Smith. You're very vocal about it. You're very high on the Seahawks, and I respect that. I get it, but this offensive line worries me. Geno Smith does not. Geno Smith, I still think, is a great quarterback. He has great touch, strong arm, can move around a little bit also. I just want to see JSN incorporated more into this offense. I think that he has such a great ability of separation, of great route running, that he can be super beneficial in those areas where DK Metcalf is an explosive wide receiver. That's how you need to start utilizing him. He's your best offensive weapon. Start generating touches for DK. He has that body type that you can do that with him also. So they have a different plethora of ways that they can win on offense, especially with an offensive line that is weak. How are they going to mask that? That's going to be interesting for me to look at with Seattle. It's an exciting, let me not say young team, but of course some young pieces on this team, especially on the defensive side where Spoon was one of the best corners last season. I'm blanking on Tariq Woolen has been disappointing in terms of where he started.
His rookie
him
season.
And Sauce, right? That whole competition, their rookie season. It was never a convo, no doubt about it.
Reek is great. He's in zone coverage. He's just pretty clueless, but in man coverage, he's one of the elite guys.
Also, what's starting to be funny, I don't know. Have you been locked in on the fantasy footballers?
What?
Because they brought it to my attention. Shout out to you guys, of course. You guys are the goats of fantasy. They brought it to my attention that defenses only play zone nowadays. 75% of defenses are zone defenses. So in that case, when we look at man and we look at man beaters, and the first name that comes to my mind is Nico Collins, because against man and against press, he's one of the best wide receivers in football. But against zone, he was good, but not as elite as he was against man and press. Now, are we going to start coming to conclusions where we don't look at man and press anymore? We're solely looking at how you are against zone defenses, because teams primarily play zone defenses until you get to the red zone area. So, there's different ways that football has become so particular in how you have to evaluate it now, where teams do run zone, and it makes sense because you need to have your safety blankets over the top. You need to make sure that you got the flats covered too. You got to make sure that there's just so many checks that you have to make, but zone makes so much more sense where you have your responsibility. You have to make sure you know your area, who's running in which area that you're covering. So are we going to look at that type of Seattle defense that once did have great success with zone coverage, of course, talking about the Legion of Boom, but now you get to the point where you have these young guys. Are you going to continue to put that same philosophy when do you know that they can perform to that level?
It's just easier to be responsible for an area of the field rather than the entire field. And that's where I feel like, for the most part, I don't think teams in the NFL have the personnel to run man coverage. There's maybe about like 5 to 10 that can run it at a high rate.
There's a lot more receivers than corners out there.
Exactly. And that's the thing. You run zone because you're scared of these receivers. Like, I'm running it because I'm scared of Nico Collins. And really, when it comes to just running zone at a high rate, I just think a lot of teams don't have the personnel to match up man to man.
75% of defense is crazy. That shocked me.
I think there's also just ebbs and flows that comes with it too. Like, Shanahan, McVay style offense is super prominent right now, but 10 years from now, what other offense is going to come in and put different stress on different parts of the defense? And now all of a sudden it's 60-40 zone. So I think, right now with how the offenses, especially that tree we're talking about, McDaniel's in there too, and the speed that these teams have and the versatility, it is difficult to just man up because there's not many corners in the league who are guarding these top receivers. And if you are playing man, you usually have two dudes behind you saying, all right, you're not getting beat over the top, so you can play a bit underneath or you can anticipate a dig route or a comeback. I got you over the top because we talked about the receivers, bro. Like, there's like 20 dudes who are worthy of top 10. Corners, it's really not the same thing.
That's true.
But that's why I'm so excited about Ryan Grubb, though, to talk about this 11 personnel stuff, because that's all he ran at Washington with Polk, Odunze, and McMillan. That's all they ran. Those three guys were out there all the time. I think that the reason the Seahawks struggled in this grouping was because of their predictability. They had a 93% shotgun rate in 11 personnel and a 12.1% play action rate, which you look at Geno's numbers. He ranked number 1 in efficiency on play action passes, but Seattle ran it only 21st in the league. And 31% of their drives ended in a punt or turnover. That was only behind the 49ers. But their red zone efficiency ranked 25th. This offense was really good. It was sustainable. The reason is the red zone offense, and I think the predictability, and Geno Smith on first and second down, 5th in QBR, 2nd in completion percentage over expectation, 2nd in EPA per dropback. On third down, 21st in QBR, 17th in completion percentage over expectation, and 22nd in EPA per dropback. And the reason for that is the predictability, but also, like you said, like the offensive line is not good. And they need multiple guys to take a step. If Cross could take a step, if Connor Williams is still good, if Abraham Lucas is healthy, I think this offensive line can be good enough to just give this offense some life to make plays down the field, because this offense is elite. They just need time to work through their progressions.
If anything, start taking the Miami approach at it. I know easier said than done, but I mean that in the sense of getting the ball out quickly. DK is a fast wide receiver. He ran a 4.39, if I'm not mistaken, or 4.34, something stupid like that. He's a freak athlete. But then, of course, when it comes to separation, JSN can still get open at a very great rate. And then, of course, Tyler Lockett's another burner in his own right, but of course he is older. I do wonder about the running back situation, too, where we did see Kenny Walker get injured. The wheels kind of fell off towards the end of the season. Love to hear that. I want to see him really progress as a receiving back, because then, of course, it makes it easier for him to stay on the football field. But again, we saw him early in the season, dominant. As the season went on, did get banged up, came back, wasn't the same, wasn't as efficient.
I just don't think Charbonnet is as talented.
I need Charbonnet to see as minimal opportunity as possible.
That's what I think
I need it to be a 70-30 split at the absolute worst, in my opinion. I think Kenny Walker is by far the more talented running back. And so I'm interested to see how fast-paced this offense looks. They have so many options that they can go to, especially with the new offensive mind. Are they going to what philosophy are they going to incorporate, because they have a good amount of talent?
Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, the funny thing about the Seahawks right now is that
maybe not.
5 fights broke out at Seattle Seahawks practice on Wednesday.
What was the video? Someone was
Leak Neighbors?
No. That they were just a regular clip, and then in the
DK?
background.
That was DK.
DK.
Yeah.
I thought so.
That was nuts. Dude looked like a little boy next to him.
DK,